Hey everyone, it's me, Angela Walters, your favorite midnight quilter. And in this video, I'm going to be showing some quilt love to one of my Quiltsies, my best quilting friend, with an adorable mini quilt that uses traditional piecing and foundation paper piecing. It is so cute, I think you're going to heart it. So, let's get to it. Don't be scared. Foundation paper piecing is a fun way to create intricate shapes that might not be possible with traditional piecing. I'm going to be demonstrating how easy it is to do it on a block that's going to have you seeing hearts. Well, two of them in fact. To make this quilt, you're going to need just a few things. First, the quilt pattern. Don't you just quilt love it? The background fabric, and I've opted to go with this white so that those prints really pop off of it. And then some coordinating prints. Now these are all pink prints from my inked rainbow line, and these two are going to be the hearts and the border and binding, and these two coordinating prints are going to be the letters that make up the words of the quilt. But if you're not into that color, no worries, I have 4 other colorways you can pick from. You can go with gorgeous green, brilliant blue, ooh, peachy peach, or even purple. But since my Quiltsie loves pink, this is the one I'm going with. So let's get to cutting it. Now this is a mini quilt, so these pieces are going to be nice and small, which means I can get it done quickly. So you might be wondering, what's a Quiltsie anyway? A Quiltsie is like your bestie, but better because they're your quilting best friend. I have to thank my friend Joni for coming up with the term. Her and I were talking about how Valentine's Day is coming up, and sure, Valentine's Day is normally a time to shower love on your significant other or your spouse, but we thought it'd be a lot more fun to show affection to our Quiltsies. So that's why I'm making her this quilt. Quiltsie isn't just a regular quilting friend, it's like your best quilting friend. For instance, if somebody knows the size of your real fabric stash, they're your Quiltsie. And I'm not talking about the decoy fabric stash you have to throw other people off the trail. Other ways you might know they're your Quiltsie: when you call and say shop hop, they say, when do we leave? You know, your Quiltsie. Well, let's get started with the center of our quilt. We're going to be making the hearts with the foundation paper piecing technique. Seriously, it's so easy. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. First, I have my blocks printed off. Now you can print yours off on printer paper, totally fine, but I'm actually using foundation paper piecing paper because it's thinner and easier to rip off. Now we're going to be doing a lot of trimming and ironing, and so I have my ironing mat and my iron close by, but I'm also going to use a seam roller. This angled barrel puts a lot of pressure on that seam and gets it nice and flat. And then when the block's done, I'll hit it with a hot, dry iron. And then you're going to need a rotary cutting ruler. I'm actually going to use my add a quarter ruler because it has a little lip that will nudge right up against the fold. You'll see how it works here in a second. So now let's get started with our blocks. It's kind of fun because Joni is actually the one that taught me how to foundation paper piece. In fact, most of these notions are hers. That's how you know they're a Quiltsie. They're always willing to lend you the cool new tools. I mean, you do the same for your Quiltsie, right? All right, so let's start with our first block. On it, it indicates the fabric colors needed and in the order we want to place them on there. So in the first place, I'm going to put fabric B. Now this is the part that seems counterintuitive. I'm going to put the wrong side of the paper to the wrong side of the fabric. Grab my fabric B and place it over that number 1 spot. Now to keep that fabric from shifting, I'm going to hold it in place with a dot of glue because we're going to be moving this block around a lot. Making the paper piece block really follows the same steps over and over again. We're going to trim, sew, and then trim. So I'm going to fold on that line between 1 and 2. Now I'm going to use a piece of cardboard. It's going to give me something to work with here, but you don't have to have that. I'm going to place the cardboard directly on that line and then folding just the paper back over that cardboard and give it a nice, good fold. This is important because we're going to trim this extra fabric away. We don't want that bulk in our block. You could use a rotary cutter ruler like we talked about, but I'm going to use my add a quarter because it has that lip that nudges right against the fold. Oh, and we're going to have a lot of little pieces of fabric as well. So I have a little trash can to help hold those. So now that it's trimmed to the right size, I'm going to progress with the second one. So I can see spot number 2 needs fabric A. So I'm going to flip it over, grab my piece of fabric A, And as a side note, in the pattern, I've written down all the sizes you can cut these out so that there's no guesswork to it. And I'm gonna align the two edges like this. Now, before I sew though, I wanna make sure that it actually is gonna cover the spot. That's the trickiest part about foundation paper piecing. Always had trouble with that. I would sew, flip it over, and it wouldn't cover the space. But then Joni taught me a really cool trick. She said, if you take your block and you pin about 1/4 inch away, you can fold it over as though you've sewn it and audition and make sure that it actually fits the area. See, that's why she's my Quiltsie. She's so smart. So I'm gonna pin it just like it was that 1/4 inch seam and then fold it back as though I'd actually pieced it. And then I'm just gonna audition and make sure that, yep, it covers the whole area. So I'm gonna line those two edges together, make sure it's right in the right place, and I'm gonna pin the pieces to the paper because I don't want it shifting. And then I'm gonna turn it all the way over and I'm gonna sew on that line between 1 and 2. So I'm gonna take the whole piece over to my machine. Now here's the next tip. I'm gonna shorten my stitch length so that it perforates the paper more and makes it easier to rip out when I'm all done. So I think I'm gonna go with a 1.8. And then all I have to do is follow the line. And see, that's not so bad. That's like the shortest line ever. But now what I'm gonna do is press it into place so that it stays where it needs to go. Now this is where you could use your iron if you wanted. I'm just gonna use my seam roller to get it nice and flat. There is how it's looking so far. But before we move on, we need to trim. We're gonna trim in between each step. So I'm gonna look at the line in between 2 and 3, grab my high-tech piece of cardboard, and place it directly on that line. I'm gonna fold the paper back, but not the fabric, and give it that nice crease. Then, again, using my add 1/4 ruler, nudge it up right against there, and trim the extra fabric. And there I have it nice and trimmed. Now I'm gonna get the third piece of fabric, which says it's gonna be fabric C, and place them right sides together with that raw edge aligned. Got my next piece cut, it's plenty big, so raw edges together, right sides together. I'm gonna pin it as though I were actually piecing it, and I'm gonna audition it and make sure it fits that whole area. And if you have a light box or a window or a nice bright light, you can just hold it up and make sure it fills that. And I have a little bitty hole right here, so I'm gonna shift it over just a bit. I will say the more you practice, the better you'll get at placing it right the first time. At least that's what Joni says. Once I have it in its proper place, I'm gonna pin through the fabric and the paper just to hold it down. Then I'm gonna flip it over and sew on that line between 2 and 3. All right, I have the next part done, and by now you know what to do, right? I'm gonna flip it over and press that piece into place. Now I'm gonna move on to number 4. Line up my next piece, right sides together, again using it in the order it tells me, pin it in place, and then sew on the line. Of course, a Quiltsie does way more than just loan you their stuff. Other ways you might know if someone's your Quiltsie: they save you a place at retreat because they couldn't imagine spending the whole weekend not talking to you. Or you go fabric shopping with them only to end up buying the same thing. So it's like sew, press, trim. Now all of this is extending past the block. I'm not worried about it yet because I'm gonna trim this all up at the end and make it look nice. My next section is number 5. Of course, you don't have to use a piece of cardboard, but it just kind of helps give you something to hold on to. Nice fold, and then my add 1/4. And I can cut it all, and put those raw edges together, right sides together. A quick audition. Oh, looks great. I mean, that's what's great about paper piecing. It makes it look like you're a really great piecer, even if you're not. One funny thing about Joni is she's actually a retired home ec teacher, and I think the fact that she used to teach home ec and the fact that I failed the sewing machine test in home ec was automatically the reason we would be besties, or Quiltsies. And now I have a really funky looking block, but it's gonna look amazing in just a second. So once it's all pressed into place, then I'm gonna trim along the outside of my block. I'm not gonna trim on this inner line, that will be not good. I need the seam allowance, so we're gonna trim along the outer edge. But before I trim, I'm gonna give it one quick press with the iron just to make sure everything is in place, and then I'll trim it to size. I just think life would be so much more boring if we didn't have Quiltsies, right? The person that totally understands when you're excited about that fabric sale where you got that out of print fabric that you've been looking for forever, yeah, they totally get it. And a quick trim. And there is the first part of my heart. Now, even though this block is finished, I'm not gonna rip off that paper yet. I'm gonna save that to the very end. What I am gonna do is piece the next block that goes next to this so I can show you how to join paper piece blocks together. One final press before we trim it up, and we'll be done with this block too. So this itty bitty block is pieced and ready to go. I have the one I made prior, and I'm gonna sew them together to make that cute little heart. One thing you can do to make sure you get that beautifully perfect point where it comes together is use a pin to mark that point right there, the point where it's going to hopefully sew together and come nicely. I'm gonna put it right on that point, right through it, and do the same on this side, just to make sure that they're lined up. So now the pin is going through both of those, and I can line up my edges, pin the rest of it in place, and sew along that seam. And again, since I have that line right there, I don't have to worry about seam allowance or anything. I just gotta follow the line. See how it turned out. I think that's beautiful. All right, I'm gonna press this real quick, and then we'll see how the rest of the center of our quilt comes together. Now I've laid out all the pieces to the center of my quilt. I had those two cute little blocks you saw me make and my other two paper piece blocks. And these are pieced exactly the same way in the order indicated on the pattern, trimming and sewing and ironing. Now I have all my pieces laid out. I'm going to go ahead and assemble them. Seriously, look how cute that is. This would be an adorable pillow by itself, or maybe even a wall hanging, but I really want to add some more Quilt Love to this quilt, so we're going to move on to the letters. All right, I have all my adorable pieces ready to make the first letter of my Quilt Love, the Q. And we're going to be doing the stitching and flipping technique. And I'm going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on the back of those fabrics. The pattern is going to tell me exactly where to place my squares and what arrangement the line should have. So this is actually going to be the top, this is going to be the bottom. So the longer strip, my lines are going to actually angle the same direction. That's going to be the bottom of my Q. But on the top strip, they're going to angle in towards each other. I mean, whoever wrote this pattern did an amazing job, so just follow the diagrams and you'll be fine. Then I'm going to stitch on the line and trim a 1/4 inch outside the line. But before I do that, before I make that cut, I'm going to quickly fold it back and audition it and make sure that it is in fact going the correct way. And this is what it's supposed to look like. So a quick press and a trim, and we'll put the rest of this block together. So I have my top and my bottom. I'm gonna put my little pieces over here, my center, and then I'll add the side. So cute. Once I had that section done, I can sew this to the side and then the strip to the bottom. This is why I love giving my Quiltsies quilts. They know what they're getting is really special. She's also one of the first ones I'll text when I give somebody a quilt that I thought was quilt worthy, only to have them call it a blanket. I mean, only your Quiltsie would understand how wrong that is. There's my Q, and I have my U, piece the same way, same stitch and flip, different fabric. My I, is that not the easiest letter to piece? Love it. And the L and the T are actually pieced into one unit like that. I'm going to line them up, give it a couple of pieces of fabric on either side, and then a strip on the top and bottom, and that's going to create the top section. So I'm going to get this together and I'll show you what it looks like. And there's the top section of my quilt. Now that I have this finished, let me show you the top, the middle, and the bottom and how it all comes together. There's the quilt to my quilt. Here's the center, which we put together with our foundation paper piecing, and then the bottom, which is love. Just like that. And this was pieced exactly the same way as the top with the stitch and flip and the pieces of fabric in between. I think Joni's gonna LOVE it. Anyway, I'm gonna sew these together and then I'm gonna add the borders. So I have a cute little pop of color on the border to really pull out the heart in the center. I mean, seriously, that's just the cutest thing ever. I love it. So all it's left to do is to piece the center, add the borders, and then I'll show you what the quilt looks like. And my Quilt Love quilt top is finished. I am just digging the two hearts and how they look like they're on top of each other. That would not be easy to do with traditional piecing. That's foundation paper piecing all the way. Speaking of paper piecing, before I move on to the next step, I'm gonna have to remove all this paper. Once I have that taken out though, I'm gonna baste my quilt sandwich using this as the backing. And I've picked out this beautiful light pink thread that's gonna look gorgeous over the top of it. So I'm gonna get that paper removed, get this quilt sandwich made, and then we'll get to the quilting. All right, I've got my quilt sandwich basted, my pink thread in the machine, and I'm ready to start quilting. And since this is a quick project, I'm just gonna do it all over, throw in some swirls and some hearts. I think it's gonna be gorgeous. So I'm gonna finish the quilting and then put some binding on it because you know I love Joni if I'm actually gonna bind the quilt. Hey, some quiltsies are just worth it. So I'm gonna get to it and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm all finished. And this quilt is finished. I really love the center with the bigger and smaller hearts. And of course the letters spelling out Quilt Love is my favorite. This is a perfect way to play around with foundation paper piecing without committing to a large quilt. And I think Joni is going to love it. Now it might be a little weird giving a quilter a quilt, but I thought she could hang it on her wall and always remember how much I love her. And I thought, wouldn't it be a fun way to display those collector pins that we all have laying around? She could just pin them in as she collects them. Super cute. Since she was so nice to let me use some of her notions, I thought I might throw in a couple of my favorites with the quilt. I know that Joni is going to love this. And one lucky viewer is going to win 2 quilt kits in the colorway of their choice. One to keep and one to give to their Quiltsie. All you have to do to win is leave a comment below telling me all about your Quiltsie. And I'll announce a winner on social media in a week. Well, I'll see you next week on another episode of The Midnight Quilter. Until then, happy quilting!